Master Tavern Keeper's History of the Old World. Well, I had no idea that the conflict that had brought about the events of both the prequel play, Glen Woe, and the Tragedy of McDeath itself had been such a tangled web. Indeed. The simple narratives that we, as audiences, are conditioned to accept and believe as true have little bearing on how things work in the real world. As well, yes, indeed. Yeah. But I do have a question, Master Alchemist. As a soldier, to me, I would have said that the victory in, Scythe, achieved by Ross over the combined forces of the Norse and the rebels was by far the greater victory when compared to that of McDeath, who merely killed the renegade MacDonald in a duel. Why wasn't the title of the Thane of Cawdor given to Ross instead of McDeath? No, that's a very astute observation there, Heinrich. And a number of people at the time were curious about this too. Well, the answer's twofold though. For one, there's a tendency in Albion to value heroic acts of bloodshed over strategic acumen, but it's not just that. There are a number of rumours flying about back then about the relationship between the king and that of Ross, as you said. Now, first of all, it's worth stating that the thing that earned the loyalty of each Thane and cemented the alliance in East Albion were the castles. The clans that ruled in these there at the time were all branches of the great Finian tribe from the north, where, as I briefly mentioned earlier, lies the huge mysterious castle known as the Citadel of Lead. And it was this that had inspired Danko's father in the construction of the castle of East Albion. In order to earn the loyalty and secure the cooperation of each of the Thanes and clan lairds, he promised each a castle. Thus, after that, he and his son Danko went around the peninsula overseeing the construction of each of these throughout their reigns. And it was during the construction of the castle of Ross that Danko first met the future Thane, and they both unaccountably took an immediate dislike to each other, particularly Danko. Soon after this, both of them were at the courtship of the heiress of Maoláin, a woman called Andraste. It was an important alliance to cement and would give much security to the East, for the heiress was a powerful warrior and an inheritor of much influence. But alas, she was no fair maiden. Almost inevitably, it was Danko amongst the other suitors that secured her hand in wedlock, and at this, Ross was indignant. For, as it happens, he alone amongst the suitors had genuinely loved her. Danko's marriage was not a happy one, and although it bore fruit in his 2 children, Danko oft wavered in his fidelity to his queen, with pretty much every wench and serving girl he could get his hands on, as it happens. But real love, did eventually find him. One of the last castles in East Albion ever made was that of Clan McEwen that sat off the coast on McEwen Island. It was here that Danko fell in love with Morag, the wife of the clan's laird, Douglas, and thus began a long affair between the two. Somehow, the Thane of Ross found out, and seeing a way to ruin Danko's marriage and get the woman he had long loved, he went to the Queen and told her everything, showing her a love letter that he had intercepted as proof. She was a strong woman, though, and not grateful for such news. She spurned Ross's advances, upped and left, returned to Maoláin. Furious, Ross then went on to tell the leader of Clan McEwen of his wife's unfaithfulness. This led to an almighty fight between husband and wife, and The two were found dead the next day, her blade in his belly and his sword piercing her heart, leaving control of the clan in the hands of their young daughter, Julia. Although rumours abound that she was really Danko's daughter. More on that and her later, though. Anyhow, Ross never forgave himself, and Julia became one of Danko's most ardent supporters, guilt urging him ever onwards to make recompense. As far as I know, the king never uncovered Ross's betrayal, and never questioned his sudden change in behaviour, remaining ignorant of it up until the end of their lives. And so, with that, I think it's time to talk about the end of the life of King Danko and the events that unfolded at Glengivet. Ah yes, the events portrayed in the prequel to the Tragedy of McDeath, the less successful play, Glen Woe. Oh, yeah, why was that then? Well, the first play had 4 distinct parts and a lot more story going on. For the prequel, they tried to stretch out the murder of King Danko for 3 acts, but everyone knew the outcome, and it seemed ponderous. Additionally, too much time and money was spent on the costumes and set dressing, whereas the script felt half-finished. So, although the climax of the play was exciting, the road there was far too drawn out and dull. Anyway, Sedrik, how did it play out in real life? Well, after being told that he'd been gifted the title of the Thane of Cawdor, Macbeth returned to his own castle, Runsanane, and told his wife all that had transpired. Lady Macbeth is pivotal in this tale. She was the third leg of the stool upon which Macbeth would be turned about face, changing him from a loyal subject to a bloodthirsty usurper, and she, like the Norse shamans of Hagtree Copse and the 3 witches on the heath, was a puppet of the dark god of change. She was steeped in magic and had some mastery of the winds of Ulgu, as well as dabbling heavily in dark magic. In her studies, she had caught the eye of the dark god of change, and he'd gifted her a hound, suckled on the stuff of chaos itself. It was a 2-headed beast with a scorpion's tail that could breathe fire, whom she called Spot, and would only answer to his mistress. Anyhow, upon hearing the news of her husband, visions of unchecked power flooded her mind, and she was soon urging Macbeth to do away with the king and usurp the throne. And, under her influence, the Thane soon found himself plotting the untimely death of Danko himself.
Oh, my dearest love, Danko comes here.
And when goes hence?
The day after, as he purposes.
Oh, never. Oh, never shall son that Morrissey. You face my Thane. This is a book where men may read strange matters. To beguile the time, look like the time. We wait in welcome, worried looks upon our faces, quivering like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. He that's coming must be provided for by murderer's blade and orc's axe.
Now the thing was this. Since the victories at Castle Cawdor and down in Fife, the treacherous Thane of Cawdor had been executed and his title gifted to the valiant Macbeth. To celebrate, the king and his entourage had decided to journey to visit Macbeth in his castle, Runsanane, and it was en route in the inaccessible valley of Glengivet that the Macbeths laid a trap for Danko. Oh, yeah, I do love a good ambush story. What was the terrain like, and what forces were involved? Oh, you're in luck. That was exactly what I was about to get onto. Now, the actual entourage of the king was minimal. Accompanying Danko himself was the court wizard, Murgrey, and 3 of his nobles, the Thane of Ross, his champion Angus, and Macduss, the king's bodyguard, and one of his most trusted confidants. These were being escorted by a group of 10 elite warriors, known as the Teeth of the Growling Shields, on horseback, armed with swords and, obviously, shields. Macbeth and his wife had recruited a very motley crew in order to do the deed. If you recall, earlier I mentioned that Macbeth and his lieutenant and best friend, Banquo, had earned themselves a bit of a reputation the previous year by defeating and capturing a tribe of shipwrecked orcs. It had been assumed by everyone that they'd all been executed, but this had not been the case. Lady Macbeth had bent her considerable will and magical powers to break the leader of the Greenskins, Mogro Neckbreak, and enslave him to her will. With him under her thumb, the other orcs and goblins simply followed his lead. And so it was with these that Macbeth decided to ensnare the king. Now, Glengivet itself is but a tiny hamlet up in the mountains near the castle of Runsanane. Here, 3 roads converge, one leading to the village of Balloch in the south, the other leading west to the small settlement of Iskragau, and the last leading east to the castle itself. There was not much there, a couple of sod huts, a mill on Givet Brook, a fallow field, and a couple of toll booths on the road, which were everywhere during Danko's reign, and one of the ways he raised revenue to pay for all the castles he was building. In fact, it was his father that had introduced the concept of money to East Albion, as it happens, but its evil ways were abandoned after the tyrannical reign of Macbeth. Anyhow, the reason this place was chosen for the trap was this: it also contained an inn. Lady Macbeth had used her magics to manipulate the mists of Albion to slow the progress of Danko and his entourage, meaning that by the time they reached Glengivet, it was nightfall. The cliffs and mountains that surround the valley were well known as being infested with outlaws and monsters, so the king would no doubt stay the night at the inn before continuing his journey at dawn. The Macbeths brought around 40 or 50 orcs with them and split them up into 3 mobs, one for each of the ways into the valley. There would be no escape for the king and his allies. Macbeth himself, in disguise as a bandit, took control of one, as did Banquo and Lady Macbeth, likewise hiding their identities. Macbeth also hired 3 renowned murderers to do the deed and kill the king, assigning one to each of the mob of greenskins. The king billeted in the inn with Macduss and a couple of warriors standing guard. Ross and Angus took up residence in the 2 nearby sod huts, with a couple of shield guards and the wizard Murgrey resting up in the mill with the rest. The horses were left to graze in the field to the west of the inn, but the king's horse was left in the inn's paddock. So, with that, the scene is set. Do you have any further questions there, Heinrich? Oh, no. Please, continue. And Master Tavern Keeper, any questions from your good self? No. Please, continue. Excellent. Then let's get to the murder. Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, and Banquo first each unleashed the murderer from their mob in order to try and come up upon the king as he slept. Now, as it happens, my cousin, the bard Tiernan, composed a poem called Old Glen Woe that describes the king's last night far better than I ever could. So I'd like to finish the death of King Danko with that. Old Glen Woe. Hark now and hear of the foul resolution of King Danko's curse. Under the blades of the 3 foul killers, paid with coin from Macbeth's own purse. Each was skilled in killing, and in the dead of that fell night, they moved as silent as a spectre, hidden in shadow and clouded moonlight. Slowly they crept through the glen, towards its sleepy docile inn, their blades naked and ready to pierce the prone king's skin. One stalks along the road from Iskragau, snaking silently as a stoat, to come upon the hut of Angus, slip in and cut his throat. The second came from Runsonain, over Givet Brook in Silent Heart, and into the hut of the Thane of Ross to plunge a dagger into his heart. The third, most vicious, came from Balach, straight in through the inn's back door, and wasted not a moment in spilling blue blood across the floor. The murderous ruckus alerted Macduss and the King's Shield Guard, and they struck down Danko's killer with stab-cut thrusts most swift and hard. But at this, the greenskins of McDeath moved towards the surviving entourage. Their guttural growls pierced the night, and their sinewy forms loomed large. Macduss roared in anger, spying the enemy atop the south ridge, and charged towards the orcs from Balak, catching them as they crossed the old Givet Bridge. He and a pair of shield guard tore into their brutish ranks, cutting deep into their number before each fell and in death sank. But their sacrifice gave their comrades enough time to prepare to fight, and out of the mill they poured, still unaware of their plight. For from the east and west came more greenskins, crude blades, eager for blood, one mob slaughtering the shield guard's horses, the field awash in hot red mud. The warriors then found themselves surrounded, death upon them from all sides, but one by one they fought and fell. "For the king!" they cried, then died, until there only remained that canny magician, Mairgrey Calcaner, who held fire at the greenskins as he made for the deep fast river. But he was not the only weird wielder. Lady Macbeth too unleashed hell's fire, and Mairgrey jumped into the waters to be washed away, life dire. He was not caught and killed that night, and made good his own escape, hidden by a mystic miss he cast and wrought, and to Donalbain did all he relate. And thus, by this night's misdeeds, did Macbeth come unto the throne. No happy occasion for anyone, rather one forged in blood and bone.